Hi there, this is Karen Long, and we are about to start our session utilizing responsive pages. Welcome. I'm excited to have this session to talk over responsive pages. I'm going to give it 1 minute, and then we'll start, at 4:01 or Eastern time. But while we wait, I'm going to set up our first poll question. So hopefully everyone can see it. Hey, welcome for everyone who just joined. Again, this is Karen Long, and I am presenting utilizing responsive pages. We have a poll opened. I'll leave it open for another minute, and then we'll close it and see the results. I'm asking everyone what best describes your organization's adaptation of cloud's responsive pages. If you are live on all responsive pages available, live on many responsive pages, responsive what, classic all the way, not live on cloud, or another unknown scenario. Okay, so leave that open for another minute while I talk a little bit about Alir. So I'm a cloud consultant with Alir. Alir is an Oracle partner focusing in cloud, PeopleSoft, EBS, and advisory services. We were established in 2005, so celebrating 16 years. We help our clients succeed by partnering with them to efficiently implement, integrate, and optimize their software investments while providing strategic guidance to assist with best practice core business process improvements and specialize in helping unlock the potential of software investments. And we have a deep relationship with the Oracle Cloud product teams. So a little bit about me. I am a cloud consultant with Alir. I've been a cloud consultant for the last 5 years, and I've typically focused on reporting, but I'm shifting over to core HR as by this session, responsive pages as well. We also have several other Alir sessions that definitely attend if you are, if something sounds relevant to what you are working on. So we have managing changes for successful Oracle Cloud adoption, as well as understanding OTBI and BI Publisher, prioritizing project management, and cloud project portfolio management. So definitely, if those sound of interest to you, I'm sure, I know that there are going to be some great presentations out there. Okay, so let me close that poll. Okay, and we will, okay, great. So, so I'm seeing the responses, and we've got a kind of a large group of responses. So we have some other unknown, and then not live on cloud yet. So that's awesome. So this hopefully will have lots of relevant information if you are considering making a shift to cloud. And then we have some a good chunk of people who are live on many responsive pages, but not all. So hopefully there's some good tidbits in there as you make the transition to more responsive pages. Very cool. Okay, so for today's agenda, we're just going to give a high-level overview of Oracle's responsive user interface, as well as universal considerations for all of the responsive pages, and some documentation that I found pretty helpful, a sample approach that we are doing with an HR admin group as they move to responsive pages, some challenges we experienced, as well as some user experience wins. Okay, and with that being said, I'm going to launch our next poll. Okay, and so it's typically I prefer things that are A, simple, efficient, and clutter-free, B, complex, inefficient, and cluttered. I'm only going to give us not too long for this one. I'm thinking I might be able to identify where the answers are, but we'll see. 30 more seconds. Or probably 15 seconds. And I am not a good timer, so I'm just going to end it now. Okay, yes. So most people, and this audience is no exception, enjoy simple, efficient, and clutter-free things. So this was definitely the intent behind Oracle's responsive user interface pages. So they did, a few years ago, they did a lot of analysis of some heavily used pods to identify, where clicks were happening, how people were really utilizing these highly used pods, and redesigned many of the pages based on their analysis to make them simpler, clutter-free. What fields are being used? How can we make this as easy as and simple and efficient as possible? So they did that analysis, and then they created these pages that can be viewed similarly on desktop device or mobile devices. So no matter what device you use, you pretty much see a very similar output. So that was the intent behind the user interface, the responsive user interface. And I'm in some scenarios, I think it went very well overall, but then there's, of course, different complexities in different organizations, and maybe that is not always how it ended up. So we will talk about some of the challenges we experienced, as well as some wins. Okay, so there's a lot of documentation out there. But I wanted to touch on a few of the main ones that I've found very helpful. There is a white paper on the user experience setup information that goes all the way up to, I believe, 21C. So it starts with the initial pages that were released in 18B or 18A or 18C, and then goes up all the way to current. And it has how you actually set up the profile options for the different responsive pages, as well as module specific information about the specific pages and special considerations. Now this next one, we weren't able to use at our client because they are on break glass. So if you are in an organization that is using break glass or are planning on using break glass, this responsive experience uptake tool isn't available. But it sounds pretty impressive and very helpful in the move to responsive pages. Some other documents, what's new, those come out every quarterly release, and those have all the updates that and all the new features. So they're very helpful, very detailed, and many times they'll have a ton of information about responsive. New responsive features. I believe the 20A one is just filled with new responsive features, as well as great screenshots. So they're very helpful. They're on the Cloud Readiness site. Then we have Transaction Design Studio. So this is a tool that Oracle introduced, and you can use this for the responsive pages to customize what fields are shown, as well as what fields are required. It's a very I would say it's a very user-friendly tool to use once you get the hang of it. This document gives an overview. And then Cloud Customer Connect. And that leads me to my next poll. And I'm going to launch that real quick. And it is, how often do you visit Cloud Customer Connect? Daily, around every few weeks, around once every few months, annually, Cloud Customer what? I'll give us 15 more seconds. Maybe I'll do a better job counting this time. We shall see. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Okay, so we've got some pretty frequent users of it, and then we do have a few who are less frequent, and then we have a large majority of Cloud Customer What. So that's really great, because it is a great place, a great resource to go to, especially with the move to responsive UI. There just have been a ton of office hours, they call them, where Oracle product managers describe new features or like overall strategy. And they had those for, I think, a year of office hours focused on the responsive UI. There's all sorts of helpful articles. You can list your questions. You can just ask blog post questions. So really helpful to go to if you are thinking of moving to the cloud, or if you are live on the cloud. Just a great resource with a ton of information. Okay, so now some universal considerations of the responsive pages. These are pretty basic, but just and potentially if for customers not on HCM yet, not very relevant. So as more and more people are newly, or organizations newly moved to the cloud, these responsive pages are going to come in by default. So all that big bucket of people that we have that are not live on cloud yet, depending on where you are, what release you started with, or even if you don't have a pod yet, you are likely going to get many of these responsive pages that already on by default. Okay, the next one we have is Transaction Design Studio. Oh, so sorry, the HCM responsive pages enabled set to yes is something that you need to set up to set all of the profile values up. Okay, so then we have the Transaction Design Studio, is that tool that I mentioned. Very, very helpful tool. Okay, we're going to talk about a sample approach for a client that was already live on HCM Cloud. So we focused on one user group, HR admin. So we focused on the people who are doing all of the actions, or they're changing all of the assignment records for all of the employees in an organization. So that was really where our focus was. Since the responsive pages had an iterative rollout and an incremental rollout, we also decided to do this in a more phased approach by focusing on one user group at a time. What was really helpful is we got the really strong subject matter experts in the current processes for the pages that were on the classic side. So we reviewed those pages with the subject matter experts. And then after we reviewed the current processes with the subject matter experts, we reviewed the responsive pages with the subject matter experts. So we really, by having those subject matter experts, they were really able to guide, like, this is how our HR admin use these pages. They use this, action for these things. They need to see these fields. They need to do this kind of action, this kind of process for this. And there's workflow associated with this process. And then we reviewed the responsive pages and tried to they were pretty happy with the current state. So moving to responsive was a bit of a challenge, but we tried to match that functionality or see where we could make improvements with the responsive pages, or at least keep things that were appreciated in line. Then the next step we did is we turned on fields using the Transaction Design Studio. So because Oracle wanted to make these pages really clutter-free and efficient, by default, they're pretty bare. So in the classic pages, you'd have all of the fields, like for a person's assignment, turned on, or visible. Using the Transaction Design Studio, we made visible many of the fields that weren't visible. So we kind of took these sparse pages and filled them up a little, but we still didn't fill them up completely. So there still was some nice streamlined, less cluttered look wins on those pages. So then after this process, the subject matter experts did quite a bit of analysis to make sure that these pages are in line with what the old pages did. We found some efficiency wins. We found some consolidation. And then the next part is training to make sure the users who are used to these pages know how to go to the responsive pages and ensure that they know how to perform the duties they did on the classic pages in the responsive pages. Okay, so we did run into quite a few challenges and definitely learned a lot through the process. I think with newer customers, if you aren't live on cloud, it won't be as much of a change to start off. You'll likely be starting off mostly in the responsive pages. But we went from the classic, or from a different legacy system to HCM, and then moved those pages to different pages. So we did run into some challenges, such as a variation in documentation by module area. So there is, in that initial document that goes over how to turn on the responsive pages, there's some features and important considerations. Some of the module areas have some really solid mapping and documents that show, these are the classic pages and this is what you would do on them. And then here is the new responsive page. So compensation, for example, had a really strong document, but we didn't find that consistently across the board. So in the core HR, the person management, we didn't necessarily see all that same in-depth mapping documentation. So some of it was really pulled together. We use Customer Connect to ask questions, and really, it was a definitely a challenge to work through that. Another challenge we ran into is it's not a one-to-one mapping for each classic page to responsive page. So there is an area in HCM called person management, and this is the classic page. And so the responsive page wasn't just a person management 2.0. It was actually broken up into many different quick action pages. And so that was a challenge that we had one page before that was kind of a one-stop shop, and now we have multiple pages. We did in our user experience wins, we did find kind of a way to mirror what we used to have in Classic, but it definitely was a challenge at first. And initially we didn't see this option, so that was kind of daunting for the team. Another challenge that we ran into is changes in transaction process names for workflow approval. So in that person management, when a user goes in and updates a person's assignment record, that would trigger a workflow approval. And you can have rules on that workflow approval identifying, it should go to this group, it needs to get approved by this many levels, and so on and so forth. The change from Classic to responsive entailed a change in workflow approval process names. So when the change was made on the Classic page, it was called manage employment. However, when the change was made in the responsive pages, it might be change assignment. There's a promote, there's a transfer. So in some ways it was challenging because we had to identify how to create the new responsive rules. We did find some wins in that. We were able to actually make simpler rules because of the difference. Now we have more approval processes than we did before. So we could kind of, before we used to have conditions to say who it should go to, compared to now we were just able to have new processes. So that did become a win, but it was challenging at first. They also could have just been copied. The approval rules could have been copied to the new process names. But then you might have had, they were pretty complex rules that didn't need to be that complex. So that was something to consider. Some of the responsive pages, this one's called Where's Job Code? So for the most part, we were able to find all of the fields that we needed on the new responsive pages, but we did have one field, and there were several others that were identified as not being available on the new responsive page. So we have job family or job name at this organization, but they use job code as well to really distinguish. Job name was more generic. And so this field wasn't available. There was a workaround to actually embed a report to bring in the person's job code, which is kind of is a messy workaround. But luckily, this is from Cloud Customer Connect. It's an idea that is actually picked up for development and should be is expected to be released in 22C. So that's exciting. That even though the responsive pages, we did identify this as being an issue, it's good that it was that Oracle has responded and they are adding it. Another consideration: our responsive pages are module specific. So some some products are completely live on responsive pages. You don't have to do anything at all. Like especially the new customers won't have to turn on anything that you'll just automatically, these are the default on. But then we have other areas where they are not on and they're more incremental. We even have some classic pages that don't have a responsive counterpart yet. Another challenge we did identify is migration of Transaction Design Studio rules to other environments. So there is, you can move customizations from environment to environment using a tool. However, that tool currently moves all customizations. So say you're in, you're in a QA environment or a testing environment, and some of those rules are still being tested, but some of the rules are ready to move to prod. You can't pick and choose currently. All would be moved up. So this is another post from Cloud Customer Connect where I don't think I actually mentioned that. On Cloud Customer Connect, you not only can ask questions, but you can also post ideas of making cloud software better. So we have, these are planned ideas. The previous one I had shown is as well of ideas that Oracle has decided on, has decided that they're actually going to implement. Some ideas get rejected, some ideas get implemented, some never gain traction. So you can vote on them to kind of say, yeah, this is a big deal. They have a unique organization vote to show how many different organizations think this is a big deal. So they are working on a fix to easily migrate those design studio rules to different environments. And it can be done manually, with good documentation, but just an easier way to do that would be definitely helpful. Another challenge we saw is Transaction Design Studio attributes may correspond to multiple fields. So on assignment, there is an attribute called legislative information, and that actually corresponds to 10 different fields or so. So typically in the design studio, you have a field name that corresponds to what you expect, like job name, and you can make it visible or not visible. But some of those fields they're not named what you would necessarily expect, so there's some analysis and testing needed. And again, training needed. You're moving processes and ways people did things to new processes and ways to do things. So that is a consideration. Okay, so now more fun stuff. Some user experience wins. So you can take quick actions which correlate typically to links that go to a responsive page. And you can make a list of very frequently used quick actions. So we were able to really simplify the admin's homepage with all the quick actions that they would most likely need and just make them very easy to get to. And you can do this through the structure tool, which is an easy tool as well to use and kind of organize how the homepage looks. Another user experience win is adding page customizations via Transaction Design Studio is very easy. So you get each page is associated with what they call an action, and you add rules to this page to make it display a certain way, to make fields visible, to make fields required. And once you get the hang of it, very easy, very clean process to make the look and feel of the page relevant to your organization. Okay, another user experience win is very easy to make quick actions visible or not visible. So not only fields on the page you can make visible or not visible, you can make actual page quick action links that go to responsive pages visible or invisible. So initially, when we went through this experience with the HR admin subject matter experts, we turned on, like I mentioned, we turned on all the quick actions, we turned on all of the attributes on the pages. So we had kind of a lot to handle, the pages looked very overwhelming, but we were able to parse through them, identify quite a few quick actions that, they're not relevant for this organization, make them go away, we don't need to see them. And we ended up with, a pretty clean, easy to view page. Another user experience win is we can still use, even though we have that transaction design studio, we can still use Page Composer, and we can group fields on pages according to what makes sense. So we definitely made some big tweaks to. We used to have that manage person page where it showed all the employment information. We were able to parse down the fields and then also group the fields in a nice way using both Transaction Design Studio and Page Composer. Person management functionality. So again, that was really our big, kind of our biggest challenge to get through. Is person management is really where the HR admin go to do everything. Like that's their spot. And not everything is replicated in employment info, but the majority of the things that they need to do are there. So so that was really helpful because that was going to be quite the hurdle to overcome. But after we looked at it, after we made those changes, it really became okay. Okay, so that finishes up our this session. I do have one more poll that I will launch for not super relevant, but I think it's always a fun one. So I'll just leave that open. But if there's any questions, I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A. Definitely feel free to attend those other sessions. And Quest is definitely, for all the clients who are new to Cloud HCM, Quest has done this for other, I know other products, but they are definitely a great resource for cloud. They have lots of webinars, lots of help. So definitely, I'm hoping everyone's enjoying the this Innovate. This is awesome, and hopefully, yeah, lots more learning and a great community to be a part of. Also, feel free to contact me at karen.long@alere.com with any questions or thoughts, and or sales@alere.com. And that, I think, is going to end our session. So very enjoy the rest of your time, and great presenting this information to you.